Hello, everybody. My name's Todd McMahon. I'm a volunteer with the Heritage Chapter of the North Country Trail. We have with us today Matt Davis. He's the regional coordinator for the North Country Trail for Wisconsin, Minnesota, and North Dakota. We also have with us Peter Nordgren, a longtime volunteer with the Brule St. Croix chapter. And
getting longer all the time, Todd.
That's it. We want it to be really, really, really longer too, Peter.
Peter, that
Good.
just means you get more esteemed every year.
Yeah. And we also have with us the president of the Chequamegon chapter, Kevin Schramm. The way it's going to go tonight is since we're expecting way over 50 people, everybody's got to be muted except for us 4 people. And what's going to happen is I'm going to talk about the backpacking resources. Then I'm going to talk about the camping spots in the Brule St. Croix chapter. So if you have any comments or questions about that, then you're going to have to put that in the chat, your question. And then Matt Davis will be asking the questions from the chat, and Peter Nordgren will be doing the answering for the Brule St. Croix chapter. Then we're going to do the Chequamegon chapter, and at the end of that, then Matt Davis will be asking the questions from the chat to Kevin Schramm, and then we'll be doing the Heritage chapter. We got a lot of ground to cover. So are we good to go here, Matt?
We're good to go.
Okay, so this is the North Country Trail in Wisconsin backpacking webinar. First, I want to talk about the interactive map. On the North Country Trail website, there is a interactive map that you can click on. You go to the maps page, and you can click on it and you can zoom in. It's based on Google Maps. And then when you press on a point in the map, like a parking lot or trailhead or campsite or whatever, you can do a search from there on nearby, what would you say it, Matt? Like whatever's nearby will come up, right?
Yep, hotels, restaurants, any of that good stuff.
Okay, so you can use the interactive map like that, or that's a good way of using it, and you can just kind of use it. Also on this, the maps page, they have what's called the printable maps that you can go down, and they have 8.5 by 11 printable maps, and most of the maps that I have in this presentation are screenshots of those printable maps. Okay, so if you go to my website, tmanshikes.com, and then it's /backpacking campsites, there's a document called Backpacking in Wisconsin Resources. Okay, you can print that off, and it gives you a bunch of stuff on it. It does the potable water locations. You should, if you're backpacking, you should also be bringing a water filter or some sort of purification for your water. You've got places where there's showers, beaches, restaurants, bars with foods, hotels, laundromats, Wi-Fi, libraries, resupply locations, post office, banks, and so on. So I got this list you can print out or you can just look at, but it's on my website, tmanshikes.com. As far as shuttles, the best thing would be to do is contact the local chapter. I have on that resources list that I just talked about, I also, today I went in there and I put on all the contact information for the chapters. So if you printed it off yesterday, it's different than today. At the very end, it's got like the chapter email address, the chapter websites, the Facebook page, So if you need it, contact the local chapter and they can see what they'll do. Most of the time, they can get a local volunteer to shuttle you. And please pay well, especially now since the price of gas is higher. Some of the people might say, some of the volunteers may say, well, I'm just volunteering, so I'm not taking any money. But you can always send a check to the North Country Trail Association and say it's for the like Schwamigan chapter because Ed Ronkowski shuttled you or something like that. So that's what you can do. There is one place, the place in Drummond, I forget the name of the gas station. I think it's called Bear Country, that advertises that they do shuttle people, but I don't know all the details on that. Okay, so on the North Country Trail in Wisconsin, we have 3 main trail towns. Solon Springs, which is mile 68. Drummond, which is mile 125. Drummond. And then Mellon, which is mile 169. I'll cover these in a little bit. And when I say the mile marker, I'm talking about the miles markers on the interactive map that I was talking about before. And that can change from, the mile markers can change from year to year because let's say one of the chapters changes their trail in their chapter, and then that's going to if the Brule St. Croix chapter changes their trail, that's going to affect the other 2 chapter numbering, and so on. For instance, last year the Heritage chapter eliminated an 8-mile road walk, so then the numbering is going to be different than that. But I'm hoping to, for the documents and stuff that I'm doing, I'm hoping to update them every year. Okay, so now we're coming up to the Brule St. Croix chapter. Does everything seem like it's going all right so far, Matt? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Let me just interject again for folks who just joined us. If you want to put your name and where you're from in the chat, and then if you have a favorite spot on the North Country Trail in Wisconsin. And
okay,
Todd,
I can't really see that right at the moment, so we're just gonna I'm just gonna go from here.
Yep.
And you're gonna have to, Matt Davis is gonna monitor the questions. And at the end of the Brule St. Croix chapter, a part of this, he's going to ask questions to Peter Nordgren. All right.
Todd,
so, yeah.
We did already have one question. Somebody asked if your presentation will be available. Are you going to put it up on your website?
We're recording it, right?
Right, but your presentation.
This presentation? Oh,
yeah.
I guess I can do that. I just thought if it was recorded, because a lot of the presentation is, me describing. I got photos of the campsites, but a lot of the presentation is more like me describing what's happening there. So this will be recorded, and as soon as we figure out all that, I'll have a link from my website to it. So we're going to start out with the Brule St. Croix chapter, which is the chapter that goes from the Minnesota-Wisconsin border, which is south of Superior, to Bayfield County A. So that's the chapter we're starting out with. And here's the border here. This is showing the McQuarrie Wetlands. Look at my cursor. I got an extra big cursor for you guys today, just because I'm going to be wheeling around a lot. But there's the McQuarrie Wetlands, and then up on either side of it, there's some Douglas County land, and up here on what would be the northwest side, there's the Clear Creek campsite, and then there's a place here called the Atley Oswald viewing platform. And then down here, again, we're going back into the Douglas County Forest, and we got the Spruce Point campsite. So I'm going to talk about that stuff right here. And here, I was there right when the first snowstorm of the year. This is the Clear Creek campsite. Like I said, this is only a few feet from the Minnesota border there. And as you can see, it's got kind of a view down into a little valley where the Clear Creek is. So that gives you an idea of what that campsite's a lot like. So this is kind of what I'm doing. I'm showing you a few photos of each campsite, and we're going to go on. And here is the Atley Oswald Memorial Viewing Platform, and he was a really great volunteer for the Brule St. Croix chapter. Really great. I didn't know him, but he's known for making a bunch of benches that you see along. If you see a bench that says AO on it, that means it was made by him. And he also routed a lot of signs on the trail, and his wife has taken over that duties. So they have this viewing platform where you can view wildlife. Then we're going on to the Spruce Point campsite, which this is really on a point. It's again, it's kind of like the Clear Creek campsite. It's high up on a hill where you have to go down a ways to get the water, but there's a hill, like a valley on each side of this thing here. And it's got a nice view of the valley there. This is actually on a point, so that's kind of cool. Then a little bit down the trail, a little bit from the Spruce Point campsite, is what's called the Nemadji Overlook. Or is it, Peter, is it the Nemadji Overlook or is it the Mud Creek Overlook?
It's both, Todd.
Okay.
It overlooks Mud Creek, which is tributary to the Nemadji River.
Okay, here it looks like, I don't know, maybe I pointed the wrong direction. It doesn't look like it's, I took the best photo of it here. So.
Well, you got the fall colors, and that's a great time to go and see it.
All right.
Maybe, Todd, when you get to the next campsite, you might talk about, what the amenities are of our campsites, because they're very common across the trail.
You can go and do that right now if you wish.
Sure, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to this other slide here, and you can talk about it. Oh, this is actually a campsite that Peter did a lot of work on, right?
Quite a lot of work, and there's more work to be done. As you can see, each of our NCTA campsites in Wisconsin will have a right in the center. You see one of those famous benches made by Atley Oswald. We have small tables. You can see the small table there, and a fire ring built with local rock. There is a water source. In this case, there is a trail built down to, it's built down to the Mud Creek, where you can filter water and bring it up. And the thing that you cannot see out of sight is that we have a wilderness latrine at each campsite. So there's all the luxuries you need for camping. Someone popped up a question as to what's the blue box, and Johnny is right on it. It is a register box where there's a book you can write about your experience there. And I think that covers it, Todd.
Okay, I just want to kind of mention is some of the stuff when you get into the Schwamigan chapter, it's kind of a different story about having that stuff, all of that stuff. In particular, the ones in the Schwamigan chapter do not have latrines as much as the Heritage Chapter and the Brule St. Croix chapter. We'll get in that in a little bit. Thank you, Peter. And let's
Sure.
keep going. So after, oops, I'm going the wrong way, people, sorry. So after this, then there's a road walk that you do. If you're through hiking, you'd be doing like something like a 14 or 15 mile road walk to Pattison State Park, where there's a great waterfall here, the highest waterfall in the state. And then here's the ranger station, and there's a campground here. And then the North Country Trail comes down past this Inner Falls Lake and follows the river. But there's backpacking campsites down here, but right here's a trail junction. You have to turn here to get to those backpacking campsites. So those backpacking campsites are like a mile off the North Country Trail. You can reserve these sites through the state of Wisconsin. And like I said, over here's a campground with a shower. So you can camp there, but again, these are fee campsites that through the state of Wisconsin. Now here is the two, on the left is Big Manitou Falls, which is the tallest waterfall in the state. On the right is Little Manitou Falls, which is still a big waterfall compared to some states. For instance, the North Country Trail goes through Minnesota, and we go by the tallest waterfall, not in Minnesota, in North Dakota, excuse me. The tallest waterfall in North Dakota is like 8 feet tall. So
the only
this would
one.
be, what?
It's
Yeah,
the only one.
the only natural waterfall in North Dakota. So this is still much better than some states. So we got great waterfalls all through Minnesota and upper Michigan and Wisconsin. We got great water. We should be known as the Waterfall Trail. It's great. All right. So this is what I wanted to say was after Pattison State Park, there's like a 30-mile road walk about. And if you need to hike, like if you're through hiking it, means that every year we have people hike from North Dakota to Vermont. And if you need a campsite in that 30 miles, it's a lot of like Douglas County Forest. So you could talk to Peter and he could tell you where to have camp for the night there if you really need a spot. But what I want to show you is starting down here in this corner here is West Mail Road. And this is going up through like the Brule St. Croix Portage, going through the Chequamegon, coming all the way to almost Gurnee, Wisconsin. There's 150 miles of trail. And out of that 150 miles, there's only 7 miles of road walk. So the North Country Trail is getting better and better every year. This is becoming a great section for backpacking. There's a 2.6 mile road walk northeast of Solon Springs, a 2 mile road walk west of Mellon, and a 2.6 mile road walk east of Mellon out on Highway 69 and the County Line Road. And the Heritage Chapter, we're gunning to get rid of that 2.6 miles. That's going to be, there's not going to be a road walk there in a few years. So I just wanted to show you, we got a big section of trail here that is continuous. So we're going to start here at where I'm going to show you the campsites. And this is in the Brule St. Croix, still in the Brule St. Croix chapter. And this is the St. Croix River. And first off, you get to here. This says it's the Moose River Trailhead, but that's this little river right here. And it's right near the St. Croix River, so that might be a little confusing. It's the Moose River Trailhead, but it is right next to the St. Croix River. And right away you get a campsite called the Scott Rapids campsite. And that's a campsite in the National Scenic Riverway, which you can see the boundary of the riverway right here. Then the second thing we got is over here where it says Gordon Dam parking. There's a county park here. It doesn't have showers. It's got a beach. It's got pit toilets, and it's got water that you can get. But this is a campground here. So we're going to start out here, and I'm going to look at the Scott Rapids campsite. And here it is. Again, this is a campsite in the riverway, and you might encounter canoe people here. Peter, do you ever see people in canoes at this location when you've been out hiking the trail?
Yes, we see people paddling down the river. In fact, it's a great place to watch canoeists because there is Scott Rapids that is just to the left of this picture, and you can watch people run the rapids. I will hasten to say that the campsite, while we share it with the riverway, is not overly used, I would say, either by trail users or by canoeists. You don't have to worry too much about crowding there. Even if you would have a couple parties there, it's a very spacious campsite.
Okay, and it is a free campsite, right?
It's free. No pre-registration, no reservations, first come, first serve, no charge.
Okay, so I didn't know all the rules on that, so that's why we have Peter here. So then about 5 miles east of the Gordon Dam turnoff there, you come up to the Rovers Lake campsite. And this is one I really think is a pretty cool campsite. You kind of come up on this hill on the north side of the lake, and bam, there's the campsite. It's got a really nice view. The weird thing about, I'm gonna say the unique characteristics of the campsite is that this one, the North Country Trail, cuts right through the campsite. So I'm like standing on the trail pointing to the front of the campsite. And then I'm standing on the trail looking towards the back. This is some tent pads and the latrines way back that way. So that's kind of the unique thing with that campsite. Most of the time on the North Country Trail, you have a side trail going to the campsite. This one, the North Country Trail, cuts right through the campsite. All right, then about 3 or 4 miles north of Rovers Lake, and just about 1.5 miles south of Solon Springs, you get to the Leo Creek campsite. And this one is kind of, okay, first of all, I want to apologize because a lot of these photos here are screenshots from my videos. So they're not quite the best. They're not quite the best photos. But it's got all the, it's got the bench and the bench table, and it kind of overlooks a field, and it has a latrine and everything like that. But the unique thing about this campsite is you have a trail going to the campsite from the North Country Trail. And then out near the North Country Trail, there's just these little tent pads here. So let's say you went there and the campsite was full, they have these extra places where you can camp. So that's a little bit unique compared to a lot of campsites that I've seen. Okay, so now we're going up through Solon Springs. You got Lucius Woods County Park right there, and it's got a campground. The thing that you got to know about Lucius Woods County Park is they have a performing arts center there. So and they got 29, I believe it is, campsites, but they also have a performing arts center there that has concerts. So if you hit a time when they're having a concert, this campground will probably be filled up. But here's like in Solon Springs, you got showers at Lucius Woods County Park. You got a grocery store, Dollar General, laundromat, a restaurant, post office, and bank. So this is one of the trail towns that I was talking about. And here's another look at it. And going north from Solon Springs, you get to the Aden Creek campsite about a mile north. And that's what I'm going to talk about next is you get to this big A-frame bridge here. Now, I want to tell you, just break for a half a second here and say also on my website under the backpacking campsite page, I have a bunch of videos of different campsites. Now I'm going to show you one here and hopefully everything will work, but I'm going to switch over to where to this other one. I don't know what I can't seem to get it. Oh, here, no. Well, I was gonna do a video right here, but it seems that I cannot figure it out. So I'm gonna keep going here and just forget about it. We did have a little bit of a video going before the show if you came in early. But the thing I want to say about this campsite, you come to this A-frame bridge, you take a right and you go down this little trail. And here's the table and the bench. But this campsite, the unique thing about it is there's a curve in the creek where the creek goes completely around the campsite. It is just, that's just a cool thing that happens there. There's a little bridge that takes you across to the latrine trail. And this is just a nice little campsite in the curve of the river. I've never seen anything like that, but it's really, really good. Then after the Aden Creek campsite, you have a 2.6 mile road walk, which brings you up over here. Matt, are you seeing the cursor all right? I made the cursor extra big.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so you come up to this Croix Road here after the 2.6 miles, and then you get to the Catlin Creek campsite. It should be noted that the interesting thing about this campsite is you can see the green here is Douglas, must be Douglas County Forest. Well, this campsite's right on the edge of public land. And it has a little sign that says private land. The trail lots of times goes across private land. Sometimes we get easements to go across private land, but it's right on the edge of the public land. And then the other thing I want to show you here is just going down this way from that campsite, you got the Brule bog walk here, which there's a lot of boardwalks here. It's just an incredible boardwalk system here. And then you get to the Brule St. Croix Portage, which is a historical portage that's been used since the 1600s that explorers came through. So here is the Catlin Creek campsite here. And the other, it's kind of overlooking like a low area. And the interesting, besides being on the edge of public land, the other unique thing about this campsite, you go to the right and you walk a little ways, and then there's this little area that's cleared off. It's big enough for like 3 or 4 tents. So it's kind of got a separate like little sleeping area, a separate like bedroom almost. I haven't seen that in very many campsites, but it's kind of got the campfire area. You walk over a little ways and it's got this area for your tents, which is unique. I've not seen that very much in other campsites, a unique feature of it. Then, like I said, you keep going past the Catlin Creek campsite and you get to the Brule bog walk here with all the boardwalks. Peter, how much boardwalk do you think is there? Like 5/8
The
of a
people,
mile?
the people who built it say 2/3 of a mile.
Yeah, but it's in kind of 3 big sections. And it's really incredible. I just imagine how much that would cost since the price of lumber shot up. But it is, and this is going to be a spot, these 2 spots, the bog walk and the portage, are going to be spots where you're going to see a lot of day hikers. Okay, so over here on the right-hand side, you got the stone for Henry Schoolcraft, who came through the portage in 1820. Now, if you don't know who that was, so there's a list of like, I think 7 or 8 explorers, but Henry Schoolcraft is big over in Minnesota there, where Matt Davis works on the trail. And he's the guy who made it to the end of the Mississippi River, I believe. Is that right, Matt?
Yep, helped discover the headwaters of the Mississippi River.
Yeah, so he'd been coming through there, and that was one of his journeys. And so since Matt Davis also takes care of Minnesota, the North Country Trail does go through Itasca State Park, which is the headwaters of the Mississippi. So there's a couple attractions that you can see along the trail there. Then about 3 or 4 miles northeast of that, you have the Jersett Creek campsite here, which is one of my favorites. It's a beautiful campsite on top of the hill, on top of a bluff, and the trail goes down the hill really fast after that, down to the Jersett Bridge. There's a little bit of a controversy here because some people say it's got an H in the end of it, like right here it says H at the end of Jersett Creek, and some people say it's got 2 T's. But it's a really cool campsite. And then up here, you've got the Highland Town Hall here, and there's a campsite out in the woods by Highland Town Hall. So here we're going to look at Jersett, and here's the table, and then there's a really nice view of the Brule St. Croix Valley here. In this photo, it's getting a little what do you call it, encroached in, and needs a little trimming up of the trees, I think. But the first time I went there, it was just spectacular. But sometimes that happens. You got to go out as a trail maintainer and trim back stuff. And then here's the view of it looking the other way. And back here's like some tent pads here. But again, this is on top of a little plateau, and you got to go down maybe about a 10-minute walk going down the hill to get to that creek. Now continuing on is we're getting to the Highland campsite. The cool thing about this campsite is it's in the tall pines. This is in a pine plantation. So you can come here and you can sleep on needles, pine needles. It's a good campsite for that. It's just doesn't really have a view, but it's just in this pine plantation. And the thing you need to know about this campsite is it's near the Highland Town Hall, and there's no water source around this campsite. You got to come to this building here, and there's a little faucet right here. So this is like, I'd say about less than 1/8 of a mile from that campsite. So you got to come here to this little faucet there and get your water. So just to let you know. And that brings, since we're talking about water, that brings us up to our first water alert. And water alerts. Okay. This is our water alert. After the town hall, there's a long stretch without water. And so your next chance with the water, Highland Town Hall is at mile 81.3. Your next chance for water is at the Paul Schoch campsite, which is at 88.3. But the bad news is sometimes the creek at the Paul Schoch campsite is dried up. It's a very small creek, doesn't have any like fish or anything in it. So it's unreliable. So then your next reliable water source is the Winneboujou Bluff campsite, which is mile 93. So you're talking maybe going up over 12 miles without a water source. So bring a little, what I do, I have these little platypus bags that roll up really tiny. Have one of those in your backpack, a couple of them, you can unroll them, fill them up with water. So you have extra water on this trip. Okay, so that's your first water alerts. Then of course, like I said, you about 7 miles after Highland campsite. First of all, you get to this Gaylord Nelson portal, named after our late senator. I'll get in on that. It's a parking lot. It's a little bit off the trail, maybe a couple 100 yards. Then you come up here through kind of, I don't know how to describe the woods. It's kind of a scrubby, mature forest, and you get up to the Paul Schoch campsite, and which I'll show you in a second. But here's the Gaylord Nelson portal. They have this big rock there, and he's the guy. He was governor in the state of Wisconsin, and he was a United States senator, and he's the guy who was the sponsor of the bill that created Earth Day, and he was also, author and sponsor of the National Trail System Act and the legislation that created the North Country Trail and Ice Age Trail. So if you want a nice photo opportunity, you can head to this rock, get a photo there, especially if you're, really into environmental stuff. This is just a nice spot to, and this rock, you can't really tell how high it is. It's about waist high on me. So we're continuing on to the Paul Schoch campsite, which is, again, this is a still from one of my videos, so it isn't the best. For some reason, and maybe Peter, you can answer this question, it's got extra long table here, like it's almost like a handicapped accessible table there. I don't know. What?
I can answer that very easily, Todd, because I'm the one who put those boards on there. The reason that they were left long is they had to be replaced because a tree fell on the table. And when I hauled the boards in there, the length that they came from the lumber yard and put them on, I said, I don't see any good reason to saw them off. So I just left them long. All
right. So there you got the, I got the answer from the source. It does have some nice little tent pads, but again, here's the kind of unique feature about this campsite is that creek that I was talking about, they have it dammed up here and they have a pipe that comes out, and this will have water in it when other places on the creek could be completely dry. You might be lucky enough to get water from here. So just to let you know, there is this, they did, try damming up this this creek to help with the water situation. All right, now we're going up to the Winneboujou campsite. And if you look at the contour lines, this is on a bluff, Winneboujou Bluff campsite. And it does have water, but you got to go 0.3 miles down the bluff to the little Brule River here to get the water. So just to let you know, going down the hill may not be bad, but coming back up, Peter, is it pretty strenuous, or how is it?
It's as steep as it looks on the contour map, but you can also see that it is truly benched. It crosses the contour at an angle, so it's not like you're going straight up the hill ever. And that is generally true everywhere on the North Country Trail. We always strive to keep the grade below 10%.
All righty, and at the top they give you a nice little bench to sit down on. So we're going to take a look at this campsite. It's kind of up on top of this bluff. It's kind of on like a little plateau here. It's flat. It's in the woods here. It's got all the normal stuff, the benches, the table, latrine. And here's a picture of me just taking it easy at that campsite. I needed a break. And I carry this. I was day hiking here, and I was carrying this, I carry this little 6-ounce hammock with me when I'm backpacking too sometimes. But it's got, for people who are hammock camping, there's good places to hammock camp here. On most every campsite, maybe there might be a few that it might not be good for. Maybe the Scotts Rapid campsite may not be very good for hammock camping, but in most cases, you can find a place to hammock camp. Now okay, so here's another spot here that I found a water hole. Just give me a half a second here. So this is a few miles from the Winneboujou campsite. And so Winneboujou is at mile 93, and this is at 95.5. So it's about 2.5 miles. There is a snowmobile trail here. You come down the snowmobile trail for about 100 yards, and you can see this creek. It's much closer than what it's showing here. It's just a few steps off the snowmobile trail. That's where I got water, and it worked good for me. All right.
Todd, I'm happy to report we're going to put a sign there to mark that that's a place to get water off the trail.
I am so happy about that, Peter.
And if you want to come along and put a sticker on it that says this is the Todd McMahon water source sign, go right ahead.
Okay, so people, what he's referring to there is I'm pretty well known for when I go through a spot and I'm backpacking or hiking, I usually send an email after that explaining, you know, certain things, if a tree fell down or whatever, or just different ideas that I had. And, you know, I'd asked Peter to put a little sign there saying water source, you know, down the hill. So I'm really happy to hear that is happening. Then about 5 miles west of that, or this is going east, of that water hole, you get to the Morris Pond campsite and Erick Lake campsite. These are two of my favorite campsites. They're in the woods near a nice little lake, both of them. And Peter, the thing I wanted to ask you is there a parking spot here? This is Perro Road. Is there a parking? In some maps, they say there's a parking lot here, or it's got a P. In other maps, it doesn't show a P. I didn't see a parking lot there. Is there something?
That is the access point for a hunter walking trail in the Bayfield County Forest, Todd. And if conditions are good, you can drive back in about maybe 200 feet, and there's a clearing where you can park. We don't really promote it because sometimes conditions aren't good and that little access road gets muddy.
Okay, so when I did a hammock thing in this campsite here, and I heard two guys came down, walked down to the lake with a boat, and they were circling the lake in the boat fishing. So I didn't pay that much of attention what was there or not. But like I said, these are a couple of really great campsites. Okay, so here's the Morris Pond campsite here, and these are the crew that built the campsite. It's got the normal table bench here. You can see they're making the campfire area here. It hadn't been used, but it's just a beautiful campsite on Morris Pond here. I just think it's a cool place to camp. And then you get to the, this is the Erick Lake campsite. Down by the lake here, they have this big log here that they sawed off the top of it so it's flat, so you can sit down. That's a great place to sit when you're hiking through. And then in the back part of here, going in back of the camera, you get to the campsite. And again, it's got the normal table bench and Atley Oswald bench and some tent pads. And this is the latrine trail here, and right here. And it's just like, kind of got like a little gateway here to the latrine. You don't see that very often, but it's just a solid log that they sawed up, but it's kind of your gateway to the latrine. So I just love these two campsites. And that brings us to the end of the Brule St. Croix chapter. That means I get to stop talking and let Matt Davis give Peter Nordgren some questions.
So I have not seen any specific questions on the Brule St. Croix chapter campsites, but we did have two general questions. One is about what's the rules or what's the etiquette on campsite sharing? Is it similar to the Spear Hiking Trail? And then the other question is, what do people do for keeping their food safe from bears and other critters in the campsites?
I guess, Matt, I can tackle that, and Todd may have some things to add. Etiquette for sharing campsites, yes, I would say it's the same as on the SHT. You know, because there are fairly long distances between some of our campsites, we'd certainly like people to share. That said, I've not really heard much, if anything, about people sharing campsites. Usually there's not a lot of pressure on our campsites. But again, it's good to share if people need the site. And we usually will have at least 2, if not 3, and even more tent pads, such as at Winneboujou Bluff, where there are probably 5 plus an access road that you could camp down to. Regarding keeping your food away from animals, kind of like the boundary waters historically have been, use the technique you like most. I personally like the technique of keeping your food sealed up and conceal it away from camp, away from animal trails. But you may be a pack hanger, or you may be a bear barrel person. All of those are certainly viable options. Todd, you got more on that? How do you do it?
Well, I usually have a waterproof like bag thingy, sack that I put my food in, and then I put it on a line between 2 trees, and I'll lift it up like raising a flag on between 2 trees. type of thing. That's what I do. It should be known that in certain locations that you can only camp at a campsite or an official spot for camping. Okay, so when you're in the Brule River State Forest, Peter, you could probably answer this question. You pretty much have to stay in a campsite. You just can't camp wherever you feel like, right?
That's right. The state forest, while they will give you a dispersed camping permit, they would like you to use the campsites, and they want you to get a free backcountry permit if you're going to use the campsites that are in the Brule River State Forest, which is most of the ones we've talked about since Solon Springs here.
Okay, so that's going to be a different situation than we're coming up on the Chequamegon chapter, which is the Chequamegon National Forest, where in that forest, you can pretty much camp wherever you want. But we prefer you camp at a campsite that's already been used. So then you're not like trampling new territory. We got Kevin Schramm. He's the next guest speaker here. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing fine, Todd. You're doing great.
Am I correct in saying what I just said, that in the Chequamegon National Forest, you can pretty much camp wherever you want, as long as you're using low impact techniques?
That's generally accurate. The Forest Service regulations actually say you're not supposed to camp within 200 feet of water. Now, that said, almost all the hiker-made campsites are right on the shore of a lake or a stream. And I was told by U.S. Forest Service personnel that nobody will get a ticket for using those sites. In fact, I think it minimizes the impact on the resources if people use the same sites over and over rather than create new ones. So technically it is dispersed camping. There are developed campgrounds in the U.S. forest. Those are fee campgrounds. They have the amenities, latrines, campfire areas, picnic tables. If you're doing dispersed camping, you won't have any of those things. What you can expect if you visit a campsite that Todd has identified is 2 or 3 nice tent pads, a cooking area, some type of fire ring. In one case, it's made out of steel, but mostly they're stone fire rings, and reasonably good access to water that you can filter. We have only one latrine in the Chequamegon Nicolet National Forest, and that's at the Marengo River Shelter, but that's the only one. So you would be asked to take care of business 200 feet at least from a campsite and to dig a cat hole. I'm sure some of you have done that.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah, so this is a different situation than the campsites that we have seen up to this point. Most of the campsites that we've already seen have a wilderness latrine, and I think that's the way to go. But you know, we have to do whatever we can depending on the regulations. Matt, did you hear that? I said it's the way to go.
Good one, Todd.
Okay,
We'll be
but
here all week.
yeah. Anyway, we're heading on, and we're going to look at the Chequamegon chapter here, and their areas from Bayfield County A to the backpacking campsite at Copper Falls, including the backpacking campsite in Copper Falls State Park. So there are 2 main entities: is the Chequamegon National Forest and Copper Falls State Park. And here is the Lake Ruth Trailhead, which is on Highway A. That's the beginning of their chapter. And here's the boundary for the Chequamegon National Forest. And right away here, there's Lake Ruth. That's where I got water from. You go down this little ATV trail a few feet and you can see the water. And then coming down this way, the one thing that I did not say yet, when we had the promotion for this thing, it said 10 new campsites on the North Country Trail. And so far, we haven't mentioned new campsites, but there are 2 of them that we already mentioned. And that would have been the Clear Creek campsite. That's fairly new within the last 2 years. And the Spruce Point campsite up there by the McQuarrie Wetlands. Those are 2 brand new campsites that Peter's been doing a really good job, and his crew and his chapter over there, been working hard. And over here is a spot where the Chequamegon chapter has proposed the campsite. We don't know if that's going to happen or not. And I'm saying right here at Lake Ruth, this is the spot you should get water. Continuing on, we got our second water alert, and water alerts. Okay, down over here at mile 111, you have Square Lake. You do not want to get water out of Square Lake because it's a pain in the butt. It's got a very steep hill going down to the lake. You continue on here to what we call in the 3 ponds, where the Chequamegon chapter has proposed the campsite. And it's really easy to get water out of these 3 ponds. That's just a half mile more. It'll take you more time trying to get down to this lake and get water than it will just to hike up to these other other ponds here. This is Square Lake. People want to get water from it because it's the first spot since Tower Lake. I believe Tower Lake's like 4 miles. So people have, I certainly wanted to get water from it, but I learned the hard way. So there's our second water alert. Then we're coming down here to the Rainbow Lakes Wilderness, and the North Country Trail kind of goes diagonally through the Rainbow Lake Wilderness. And the one thing that you got to know about the Rainbow Lake Wilderness is the North Country Trail will not be blazed or marked through the wilderness, meaning if you're used to those yellow rectangles on the tree, there will be no blue rectangles on the trees through here. But that being said, this trail is fairly well, what would you say, worn in?
Trodden.
Yeah, so I don't think there's, sometimes in the boundary waters, things can get a little hairy, and there's different like portages you can get mixed up with or something like that. The only place where there's another trail is this Anderson grade here. It used to be an old logging railroad, but there's a sign there that clearly shows that. So basically, you got Tower Lake, you got Rainbow Lake. How do you pronounce that? Buffalo or
Buffalo.
Buffalo Lake, and you got Renard Lakes down here. So those are the 4 major lakes. And what the Chequamegon chapter website says is there's easy to find campsites or can be found at each of those lakes along the trail. That's what their website says. So here you're coming down from Square Lake, and then there's it says Delta Lookout Tower, that's been torn down. There's a few like trail junctions right around there you kind of got to watch out for. Down here, there's Tower Lake, Rainbow Lake. The trail's right next to the lake, and you go in a little bit and there's a campsite. I was hanging on my hammock in that campsite. That was really good. I like that campsite. So there's 2 lakes there, and then you coming down past the, if you take, if you head east on the Anderson grade, which is this trail, you get to the Perch Lake Campground, but that's 2 miles away. I don't know how many people do that, but if you're camping there, this might be this green line here is also a road. So you could do a loop here using the roads if you're so inclined. But you got the Bufo Lake camp. There's campsite there, and there's a really gorgeous campsite on Renard Lake, which I'm going to show you. It's right there, and if you see here, it says it's a user-created campsite. It's not an official campsite that was made by the chapter. It's just a spot where, let's say I went out there one year and I camped there, and somebody else came along there and camped there, and then a whole bunch other people came and camped there, and then the next year I decided, hey, that was a great place, I'm going to go camp there again, and so on. It just gets worn in after 20, 30, 40 years. This case, they made some sort of bench here. So this is a deluxe campsite for sure, but it's not an official campsite. It's just a user-created campsite. So coming down below or south of the Rainbow Lakes Wilderness, you got Mirror Lake here, which has got a user-created campsite there, and down past Cisco Lake Road, you get to the Long Lake Branch. And I've been instructed by Peter that that's the name. I thought it was Long Lake Branch Creek, but it's just Long Lake Branch. There's no creek or river or anything. So that's kind of unusual. But we're going to take a look at this Mirror Lake campsite. It's a user-created campsite. It's fairly small. There's room for a couple tents. And when I was there, the lake was actually getting rather big and it was encroaching on the campsite. But a nice little campsite next. I guess I pointed in the wrong direction. It looks like it's all weeds out there, but it is a nice lake too. And then we're going on to the Long Lake Branch campsite. And this is kind of a cleared off area next to this creek. Again, this is a user-created campsite, and there's the bridge over the creek, and the campsite would be just to the left of this bridge. You can see this creek kind of curves around. That's kind of an interesting shot. The creek makes this U-ey right there. And then over here is where I got water right there, and I put water on my bandana because I needed to cool off a little bit, and I wore the bandana. But those are 2 what I call user-created campsites. Continuing on, you get down to so that last campsite was up here ways. You get down to Highway 63, and then you can take this side road here into Drummond. Okay, so Drummond has a town campground right here, right in here, and it's got a nice pavilion down by the lake, and it's got a beach, and the town campground does have showers. Because I know when I talked to I met Aden on the trail, and he asked I met Aden in the Rainbow Lakes Wilderness, and he wanted to know if I had showers, and I said yes, and he veered into town. Aden Wallace is a backpacker that's done a lot of the North Country Trail, and he veered into Drummond to take a shower. So again, this is, it's got town campground, it's got the Bear Country gas station out here on Highway 61. It's got a bar and grill, more kind of in between the campground and the highway. post office. I think it's just got morning hours and it's got a bank. And so just an interesting little note that if you see my resource sheet, there's a like motel and bar right out here on the highway. I think it's called the Black Bear Inn, and it's listed as closed. But I don't know if it's closed temporarily or permanently. You know, sometimes it'll be closed until the summer season, like maybe May 15th, it might open up again. I'm not really sure on there, but anyway, one day I went in there and I had supper. It's got a kind of like a horseshoe bar. And I kind of mentioned that I was hiking the Porcupine Lakes Wilderness. And there's a guy in there and he said, you know, I always wondered about hiking there. So I went out to my car, I got a map. And by the time I finished dinner, this guy had his whole hike plan for hiking it. So it's always good to let people know. Sometimes in these small towns, they don't think anybody, because the trailhead's way outside of town here. They don't realize how many people actually hike the trail. So when you're at a spot, it's always nice to mention that you are hiking the trail. Then we're coming up to,
Todd,
yeah,
before we move on, Kevin, isn't there now a spur trail that leads right into the town of Drummond?
There is, and this year we'll get up some signage so people know what it is. It's a 3/4 of a mile spur trail that leads from the North Country Trail right to the edge of town.
okay. That was news to me, and that's great news. And like, is it using this this is thing here is called the Drummond Woods Trail. It's kind of a nature trail. Is it using that part way or what?
Right. Off that corner of the Drummond Woods Trail, there's an old railroad grade that runs right to town, and we've cleared that as a spur trail. Mellon has applied for trail town status with the NCTA. It hasn't been approved yet. We expect it will.
Drummond, you mean?
Drummond, I mean, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Mellon is a trail town. I misspoke. Drummond has applied, and one of the requirements is that there be direct access from the North Country Trail to the town. So we undertook to create the spur trail for that purpose, and that was completed last year.
That's great news. So, you know, this is stuff I feel I'm kind of fairly well informed about the North Country Trail, but this is news to me. That's really great news, Kevin. So we're going to continue on. Just south of Drummond is this Lake Owen Peninsula here that the North Country Trail goes through. This is fairly spectacular. I thought when I was hiking, I was thinking, oh, this is near the lake, so it's going to be easy to do because it's next to the lake. But this side of the east side of the loop here, there's quite a few hills. And it was late in the day for me. I was already pooped out, and all of a sudden I hit a bunch of hills there. But the rest of it's fairly flat. I also want to say that Rainbow Lakes Wilderness, that was really flat. That was flatter than I was expecting to. Over here, you got the Lake Owen picnic area right here. It's got a beach. It's got a pavilion. It's got a hand pump. It's just a nice little place. It's probably 2/10 of a mile off the North Country Trail. And then over here, you have a campground that you can go to. It's about a half a mile off of the North Country Trail. It's called the Two Lakes Campground. It's got Lake Owen and it's got Bass Lake over here. And then over here, you're also going into the Porcupine Lakes Wilderness area. And we're gonna go see that. There's the Porcupine Lakes Wilderness area. The North Country Trail goes, you know, west to east, right through it. It goes near Porcupine Lake right there. That's kind of the highlight. And here's what the Chequamegon chapter's website says about it. There's at 135.6, there's a wide, well-used trail going south some 50 yards to a nice campsite. And then when you get to Porcupine Lake to the northern tip, there's a rather large hill, and you go up the hill and there's a great campsite there. And I'll show you that in a second. So what we're saying is, like, right up in here, there's campsites. And right here at this lake landing, there's a big hill. And if you go up that hill, there's campsite on top of the hill. And here's the landing here. Here's the lake. And here somebody brought in a rubber canoe, an inflatable canoe. And up here's the campsite right here. You go up the hill. And here's a picture I stole off the internet that shows the campsite on top of the hill. And there's the lake down at the bottom of the hill. Oh, it's pretty, again, when you're in these wilderness areas, I prefer if you camp at a spot where people have already camped, then you're not trampling, a pristine area. All right, going east from the Porcupine Lake Wilderness, you get to the spot where Matt Davis has two lakes named after him. It's got the West Davis Lake and the East Davis Lake. So he's the Davis family is really well regarded on the North Country Trail here. So here you get to Highway D and you come along East Davis Lake. There's some kind of spots right near the lake, but then the campsite's a little tucked back in the woods a little bit. Really nice campsite there. And then the other thing I want to show you on this map is another 2 miles down the trail is the Long Mile Lookout here, which is another kind of oddity. So here, let's look at the campsite. They've made these really nice benches, and it's got a metal fire ring and so on. And it's got a logbook box that you can write your innermost feelings in. Most people usually just write, it's a nice day or really liked campsite or something like that. But it does have some, this photo was taken like about a week after they built this campsite. So you can see some of the stuff is still kind of like brown from them digging up the stuff and flattening it out. But eventually grass will grow back and it'll be great. And then you're going along and you hit the Long Mile Lookout. Eventually, I would think that the Forest Service would be taking this down, as they've taken down most of their lookout towers, a bunch of them. And the fact is that satellites have taken over the detection of fires. So they don't need these fire towers anymore because they got satellites. But you can go up, there's a side trail that takes you up to here. There isn't much of a view, but you're up, and it's a nice place to have a picnic and so on. It does have a little bit of a view and you're way on top of a hill. So it's a nice spot. Now, going east of there, this is an excellent section of the North Country Trail. I think the highlight, in a month from now, I am doing another Zoom meeting. If you can stand me for another night, I'll be doing a Zoom meeting on the best day hikes on the North Country Trail in Wisconsin. And this is a great one here, but you can backpack this too. First, you got Juniper Rock here. Then it goes down to the Marengo River. Then you get to the Marengo Shelter right there. It's kind of like on a ridge overlooking the river. And you keep going. There's like a side trail here, a couple different ways to get to the old Swedish settlement. And you'll see the ruins of an old farm. And you get to the Marengo Valley Overlook and the Sally Girl Overlook. So this is a stunning section here. And I'm going to show you This is Juniper Rock, a really great overlook. If you look over here, you can see those other overlooks that when you get over there, you're looking back at this. And this is the Marengo River down in the middle of there. And then over here, here's an example of this, I believe, was the well house of the old Swedish settlement. And you'll see other places where there's foundations and so on. So it's kind of a nice place to kind of look at stuff. They do have some informational signs and stuff, so you can kind of better understand what's going on. Then there's the Marengo River shelter. Sometimes people just put their tent up right in the shelter. And this one, of course, has the latrine, which is the way to go, I think. And there's the view from near the shelter. If you walk over a little bit, you can look down, and that's the view of the Marengo River. And continuing on, you get to the Marengo Valley Overlook and the Sally Girl Overlook. So this is a great section with a lot of stuff in it. It's just a really good highlight. So going east from there, you get to another new campsite. That would be the Whiskey Creek campsite. And like I said, the East Davis Lake was a new campsite. But this is kind of, there's a creek here, and it's kind of up on a little hill. Actually, it's probably right located in here, but I couldn't really place it there because of this riding. So it's a little bit closer to the trail than that. But it's just like this nice little campsite up on this little knoll. And then over here, you got the Beaver Lake Campground, which has a spur trail going to it. It's a nice campground. I think there's 10 to 12 places to campsites. They have a latrine and a water pump, hand pump there. So keep that in mind. But here's the campsite here. This is the fire area. They're really into making these benches here. Plus they had some logs, and here's a place for a logbook box. But then the unique thing about this campsite is it's got a little trail going to a tent pad, and this tent pad going to the right, it's only a few feet away from the campsite, but it's got its own bench there. From what I heard, Kevin, you said that you brought too many benches out to the campsite. So you had an extra bench and you just set it over there? Is that what happened?
We brought some more logs out because the logs we originally used turned out to be a little bit rotten. So we redid it and carted out some logs. And one of our chapter members is very skilled at taking a chainsaw, standing a log upright and cutting it right down the middle. And so he's agreed to make this kind of furniture for us, which I mean, we prefer it over the dimensional lumber furniture. It's just a little bit more wilderness.
Yeah, well, I like it. And like I said, you can have your little tent pad here, and you know, when you get up, you got a little bench to sit on. That's great. All right, we're continuing east on the North Country Trail, and about 3 miles east of the Beaver Lake campground, there's the Lake 3, which used to be a campground that the Forest Service has decommissioned, and but we're still kind of using it as a backpacker campsite. When I was there, I seen Kim and Brian. They were hammock campers, and even though the campground was decommissioned, the Forest Service just left the picnic tables and the fire rings there. So this would be the spot that's closest to the trail, and the lake's behind there. So Kevin, did you say that you're planning to keep one of the, there was like 6 or 7 campsites, and you're planning to keep one for backpackers? Is that
Right.
your plan?
That's
Okay.
the plan. It's not official yet, but the Forest Service has indicated that they're probably going to approve that and allow us to do whatever work we need to do. Not much in this case, this year. So that'll become an official campsite by the end of the
Okay.
year.
So it's great that this former campground is still being used. You can see some of the, this picnic table, it's made out of like metal, and then it's got wood bolted to it. So I don't know if you're planning on just refurbishing that or what, but these people seem to use it just fine. So that's the story of Lake 3 there. And continuing on, we've got a really new campsite coming up. That's Trout Creek. It's so new that it hasn't been built yet. And Kevin, you've got it approved to build this year?
We do. Hopefully by mid-July, there'll be a campsite there. There's some other projects that might have priority over that, but we will build it this year.
Well, that's great. We're looking after we've seen Whiskey Creek and East Davis Lake. Really looking forward to seeing this one. And then past the Trout Creek here, you get to the Pinokie Ski Shelter, which is much like the Marengo River Shelter. And that brings us up to our next water alert. And water alert. Okay, so if you're headed to this Pinokie shelter, which is a nice shelter and all, you need to get water ahead of time because unless it's been really, really wet. When I went there, it was really, really wet and there was water everywhere. But when it's the dry time, that Trout Creek that we were showing you, which was like over a mile away, that might be the closest place to get water. So there's a water, and Kevin, you were saying you were gonna like scour the forest to see if there's any other place that's close?
Yeah, I'd like to do that this year. Just scout around in the woods near there to see if there's a closer source of water. You had talked about even putting in some type of cistern system. Not sure about that, but that's worthy of consideration.
The problem is like you could do some sort of gutter thing, you know, and then have it go into the barrel. But the problem with that is the water in there might not be good for even filtering, you know, it might get a little bad, but at least it's water that you can put your fire out with, which is a big deal. You know, it's a very big deal having water to put a fire out with. So
that
yeah.
particular shelter is on a ski trail, and it's primarily designed to give people a break if they're out skiing in winter. We cited the Trout Creek campsite where it is to give it a decent interval for backpackers. And when that's done, that will be a sure source of water. So it's probably preferable to using the shelter that's not too far away.
All righty. Thank you, Kevin. Now that brings us up to, here's a photo. This might be the same person who camped in the other shelter. I'm not sure, but that's what the shelter looks like. And here it's in this beautiful tall pines, which is a great place for, you know, a shelter. But like I said, it's a little far from water. So you keep going east and you make it another, I'd say that's about another 5 miles to trail miles. And you get into the city of Mellon. And it's got a grocery store, Dollar General, Scenic Station that's got a lot of supplies, laundromat. There's the Copper Ridge Bar and Grill where the Heritage Chapter they have pizza there. We've had our Saturday night Heritage Chapter meal there. When we have our Heritage Chapter work weekend, sometimes we have it there. And then it's got a post office, bank, and on the southern part of town, there's a motel that's kind of been reopened. It's been refurbished. And Odin Wallace, who was a backpacker that has been backpacking the North Country Trail, he stayed there and gave it a good review. I haven't heard anything else about it except for that. So continuing on from Mellon, you've got Copper Falls State Park. And you're going through Copper Falls State Park. The south campground here has the shower house. You got the north campground. Then you're getting up here to the pavilion, which has the waterfall trails. It doesn't show Brownstone Falls, which is right there. But it's got a whole bunch of waterfalls right in here. You keep going north, and they changed the campsite trail here. But anyway, there's the campsite trail going down to this campsite right here. This is a backpacking campsite, the Copper Falls backpacking campsite. And this one you need to reserve, and it's a pay campsite. Just like in these campgrounds, you can go to the state reserving site for state parks. The same thing with Pattison State Park. But this one isn't that far off the trail. It's probably, what would you say, Kevin? Maybe 3/10 of a mile off?
That's about right. It's
Yeah,
a walk down a hill and there it is. It's on the
Yeah,
river.
and you made a new trail here because this trail got washed out pretty badly.
We made some improvements. We put in a bridge. We put in a new wilderness staircase. We are planning to redo the trail down to the backpacker campsite because it's a bit too steep, but that's still in the planning stages.
Okay, so this brings us to the end of the Chequamegon. Oh, wait. Here's the Copper Falls, which is beautiful. And this is Brownstone Falls. And here's a really old photo of the backpacking campsite. They got these sandstone bluffs on the other side of the river. And this is a screenshot of my video from like 10 years ago. I still have the only video about this backpacking campsite that's on YouTube. I got to go make a new video, but that kind of gives you an idea of what it is. And then this brings us to the end of the Chequamegon chapter. So do we have any questions? Matt, do we have any questions?
We
Or,
do, yes. Somebody asked if there's going to be latrines at the new campsites in the Chequamegon National Forest.
We're hoping so. And we would invite anybody that uses those campsites to make a pitch for them in the ledgers, which we will happily share with the U.S. Forest Service. We put together a proposal for a string of campsites at intervals of about 7 miles to the Forest Service. I think it was about 6 years ago. And they're letting us build 2 a year. And we're not going to argue with that. In our original proposal, we did include latrines. The Forest Service's position is we'll wait and see. If it becomes a problem, we'll authorize you to install latrines. That's kind of where it's at. If some of you have backpacked, say in the Porcupine Mountain State Wilderness, there are sites there that don't have latrines. Some do and some don't. It just depends on how frequently those sites are used. The Forest Service is moving extraordinarily cautiously with this proposal. So we're hoping to have latrines, short answer.
Thanks, Kevin. And then there was another question about the water pump at the Lake 3 campsite, if the Forest Service was going to put the handle back on so that water pump is usable.
No, I doubt it. They're not going to unlock the latrine. In fact, that nice picnic table you saw might wind up being removed. That's part of the decommissioning process for a campsite ground. And I think they're going to try to do all that. We're happy just to have a primitive campsite there. And hopefully someday we will dig a latrine to replace the one that they're going to tear down. So that's where it's at. Any
Any other
shut,
que-
any shuttle service ideas if I were to park at Lake Ruth and end at Copper Falls? The way we do shuttles is if you need one, send an email to our chapter email address. I have a whole list of shuttle providers. I forwarded it to those people and say, if you can do the shuttle, get a hold of the hiker and let me know. And we've been batting close to 100% on shuttles. So that's what I would recommend. And we've done them that long.
And I really appreciate you shuttling me, Kevin. That was really great. That made my hike. And Ed Ronkowski shuttled me from your chapter. It's a great thing. And in the heritage, like I said, contact the local chapter and we'll see what we can do. Especially with the heritage, we have work weekends every month. So if we're up there for a work weekend, if you pick one of those weekends, it's more likely that we could easily shuttle you. Any other questions, Matt?
Yeah, we got one. How much longer is the webinar going to last? I think they might be looking forward to the Heritage chapter area, Todd.
All right, let's get going. I'm sorry, it's over an hour and a half so far. I'll try to get going here. I haven't really been keeping track. So here's the Heritage chapter. We are having a backpacking trip coming up May 15th through 18th. And that's right after our work weekend. We're going on a backpacking trip. Check the Pinocchio's meetup site for details. Thanks for reminding me about the time. I've been kind of long-winded here. Sorry about that. So when you go north from the backpacking campsite, you hit the Heritage Creek Ravine and the Northern Point Overlook, and you get to the northeast Copper Falls dispersed camping area. So these are the sites if you're going north from Copper Falls. And here's the Heritage Creek Ravine. It's a very beautiful site that you go down in the ravine, you cross a bridge and you go back up the other side. Unfortunately, I don't have very much of a good photo of the ravine. And you keep going north, you keep on seeing these, there's like three, what do you call it? Overlooks of the Bad River going north. And then you head to the northeast Copper Falls dispersed camping area. What that means, it's more like a minimal campsite. There can be no facilities at all at these DCAs. The Ice Age Trail builds a lot of DCAs. I think this is the first one on the North Country Trail. It's basically at a spot where you can't build a regular campsite, but they want you to have a spot where you can camp. So this one is on a little knoll, a little ridge, and there's a creek down below. So that's the DCA. Then heading east from there, you get to the spot when you come out to Highway 169 where there's a road walk here. And then you take a forest road up to Porcupine Hill. That one is, that's what we have right now. We actually eliminated an 8-mile road walk by doing this. But eventually here in the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to be building the trail across here. And the state of Wisconsin is going to build a new bridge there. So, so once we get over here to the Porcupine Hill, the trail is made. There's the fire tower footings here. There's a campsite, Porcupine Hill East. There's Wren Falls, and there's a campsite here, the Thomas Bridge campsite. Basically what happened here is there's a campsite at Wren Falls, which the county promotes. But the problem with this campsite is that you're camping right near the falls, and a lot of people come there to look at the waterfall. So when we got this bridge built here, we decided to build a more private campsite up this way. So we're going to take a look at this stuff here. Here's the fire tower footings. Here's the Wren Falls. And here's the Porcupine Hill East campsite. It's much like a bunch of other campsites you've seen. And, but this one's got one cool thing. It's got this tent pad right here that's right next to a creek. So if you want to sleep at just like a nice little babbling creek next to you, here's a tent pad right next to the creek. Just don't go sleepwalking in the middle of the night. You might land in the creek, but it's just a cute little place to camp there if you want to sleep next to the creek. Now, here is the Thomas Bridge campsite. This is on a little ridge. This kind of looks kind of tilted, but or curvy, but it is flat here. And here's the river, the Tyler Forks River right there. So it's a really, and this is a photo of me at the finished campsite. That other campsite was just when we were clearing it. And this is the Thomas Bridge right here, a big bridge that Iron County built over the Tyler Forks River. And this was paid, Bethany Thomas made a donation to name this after her late husband. So this is the Bill Thomas Bridge, and that opens up a lot of land to us to build the trail. So that was great. Continuing on, we've got east of Wren Falls, we got the Casey Overlook. Then we've got the Gold Mine and the Gold Mine West campsite. Just let you know, those last two campsites at the little Porcupine Hill East campsite and the Thomas Bridge campsite, they're brand new. This one, the Gold Mine West campsite's getting a little old, but it is one that Kevin came over a few years back and we built this campsite together. It's up on a big hill overlooking the valley. Then you have the Gold Mine here, which is actually a mine that they used in like 1903. So we're gonna look at this stuff. This is the Casey Overlook, which is looking towards Casey Sag Road, but you can't see it over there. So, but it's just looking east, so we called it the Casey Overlook. And here's the campsite when we are building it. You can see the flags on the tree here. That was kind of us denoting the campfire area. So this isn't quite all built, but this is up on a hill overlooking this gold mine valley here. So it's a nice campsite. There's a creek down below when you first, right at the North Country Trail and the trail for the campsite, there's a creek where you get water. So continuing on, you got the gold mine. And this is the big hunk of machinery here that back in 1910, it was a power steam drill that they used to make the gold mine. And right there's the hole. You see the hole at the bottom there that goes down 135 feet. So you don't want to mess around that. We kind of got it corded off, but that is the gold mine right there. That like I said, it goes down a long way, so you don't want to get too close to that. And here is a photo of me taking the latrine out to the Gold Mine West campsite. Now, if you're hauling a latrine out to a campsite, why not stop and take some photos? I just thought it would be cool to take a few photos. All right, continuing east, you get to the Upson Lake Overlook right here. This is a couple miles east of the gold mine area. And this is the AmeriCorps crew right here. Here's the overlook. You can see Upson Lake out there. Kevin came over and helped me with the, helped one day, helped make the trail, this trail going up to the overlook. I appreciate your help there, Kevin. And like I said, we got the AmeriCorps for 3 weeks to help build the trail. There's the overlook. And then eventually the trail starts going next to the Potato River. And then we'll get to our last campsite here. This is along the Potato River here. This is called the Tilted Gabbro. This is a fairly new campsite too, within the last 3 years. And then north of that is Foster Falls. So I'm going to show you those two things. Here's the Tilted Gabbro rock. What happened here, and it's right next to the Potato River. I was hiking down we were building the trail. I see this big rock and I say, this is a place for a campsite. Over here is the little knoll. I hit that accidentally. Oops. But there's a little knoll here that the campsite's on. But this is a big rock. And I grabbed a fragment of the rock and I took it to David Mickelson, who is the guy who wrote the geology of the Ice Age Trail. And I took it to him because I know him from the Ice Age Trail. And he identified it as the Gabbro Rock, which was left here by the glacier like some 1,100 years ago. So that's why the campsite's called the Tilted Gabbro. The campsite's just to the left of that rock there, up on a little knoll. Here is the crew that made the campsite, the roving crew. And you're kind of on this little knoll, kind of floating above the river. It's a really nice campsite. And then now we're going to Foster Falls. There I am at Foster Falls, which is a great fall. This kind of, it's got the main chute and then it's got a little waterfall over there, which is great. And there I am about 25 pounds heavier. I am rocking the world here, getting ready for my retirement. And I lost a lot of weight for that since then. So that's pretty much it. We need questions about the Heritage Chapter. What do we got?
So there was one question about food storage and the specific question of are earth sacks allowed along the trail in the Schwamigan section or any section?
I would say that yes, they would be allowed. There's just a few, as far as I know, like out west at what's the big national park out there? Yosemite, when you're hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, sometimes these places have a regulation that you need a bare vault, you know, this big canister. But I haven't heard any place in the Midwest that, maybe I'm wrong, I haven't heard any place in the Midwest that requires you to have a bare vault. So yes, your ERSAC will be good.
And for those that don't know, that's a UR sack. And I use one all the time because I can't hang food from a tree to save my life.
Well, that's okay. So we got to our last campsite. Sorry, we're a little bit long there for a while, but this is the first time we did this. So I appreciate everybody for hanging in there. Any other questions, Matt?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. The next thing I just want to say is here's the list of all the campsites here. I'd like you all to go out and camp at one of these campsites when you're hiking along the trail. And I've just got a little request of what you can do to help. If you're out backpacking, you know, when you're going to, like I said, these little towns like Mellon, they think nobody hikes the trail because people start at the trailhead outside of town and not a lot of people hike through the town. So if you stop at the gas station there to get some Gatorade before your hike, just kind of mention that, oh, it's a great day for a hike on the North Country Trail, should be good. Just kind of let people know that you're hiking the trail, because a lot of times people in these little towns need to hear that. Also, Matt, you can talk a little bit about, what we all need. We got myself, we got Peter, we got Kevin. They're all dedicated volunteers. And just for a minute, tell people what they can do to help.
Yeah, so everybody that appreciates the North Country Trail, there's things that you can do. The easiest one is to join the North Country Trail Association. And if you live in Wisconsin, you can join one of the 3 chapters. A portion of your membership donation goes back to the chapter, helps them to fund tools, buy gas for mowers, buy new chain for the chainsaw, all that good stuff. But like Todd said, we're always looking for new volunteers. Actually, tomorrow night, the NCTA is going to be doing a webinar on trail adoption. So if you have an interest in volunteering to help maintain the trail, that'll be a great opportunity. You can adopt your very own section of the trail and you can go out and maintain it. And that gives you a really good sense of ownership over the trail. So, and then if you can't do any of that, you can, just promote the trail. Like Todd said, tell your friends, invite some friends to go out and use the trail with you, introduce some new people to the trail, and there's a role for everybody to play.
Yeah, there is a role for everybody to play. Basically, I don't want to be the treasurer. I really appreciate we got Del Yerkes in our chapter. He's been our treasurer for 10 years. That's a job I don't want to do. I'm more of a trail builder. I like going out and I like hacking the earth and just helping build the trail. So whatever you can do, we really, really appreciate it. All right, Matt, it's up to you to turn off the recording and all that good stuff. And just thanks everybody for participating. And sorry it was a little long, but this is my first time doing this.
Thank you, Todd. We appreciate your passion.
Yeah, thank you. Check out my website. And if you need any more help with anything, just contact the chapters or me, whatever you want to do, we'd be glad to help you out.
Yeah, somebody just asked about where will they find the recording. We will post a link on the North Country Trail in Wisconsin Facebook page. So you can keep checking there for the link to the recording. And yeah, feel free to share that with others that you think might be interested.
Yeah, if you have a friend that you want to convince to go to this campsite. And also I have on my campsite page a bunch of videos about different campsites. All righty,